Packers GM Brian Gutekunst gave his, end of season address, State of the Union, whatever you want to call it, yesterday, and it was awful, in my opinion. I'm someone who has always been extremely critical of Brian Gutekunst and the job that I feel he has done as Packers GM. Never been a fan of the guy, never liked the guy, always thought the hire of Brian Gutekunst as the GM was weird, personally. I've always felt a little off to me how he got the GM job. He was someone who, I don't think really was ever in the initial running that people were at least aware of publicly. I think we got like some sort of interview, but it always felt like it was trending towards it being other options. And then all of a sudden they get to the final few people. None of them get the job after going through a full search. And then Brian Gutekunst just is named the GM. So I've always felt that was weird about Brian. I've always felt like there was something odd about that, just simply because Brian was, for many years was Ted Thompson's kind of right-hand guy. Him and Russ Ball, who is considered a cap guru. I'm sure every team has a guy who's like, oh, this guy really knows the cap really well. And every team thinks they're really special. Every team has a guy like that. But Russ Ball, Brian Gutekunst were former Packer GMs, right and left hand for many years. Now, the issue with that comes when it looks like potentially, former Packers GM Ted Thompson doesn't look to be in the best, shape in terms of mental faculties and things like that. But I'm not going to get into that. I'm not accusing them of weekend at Bernieing Ted Thompson, and that's maybe why Brian Gutekunst got the job. I'm here to talk about his end-of-season address. And in his end-of-season address, Brian Gutekunst sounded like someone who is confused about why this Packers team didn't reach the marks that it did. Now, understandable injuries, Micah Parsons, Tucker Kraft, Devontae Wyatt, those are three really big pieces. I think Micah Parsons is the biggest piece because I think Micah Parsons covered up so many mistakes that Brian Gutekunst made building the roster. Right? There were so many mistakes when it came to the actual construction of this roster that Micah Parsons was able to cover up. He was able to cover up that the corner room was terrible. Now, granted, a lot of Packer fans who are more skeptical of Brian Gutekunst were very much aware that this corner room was terrible. This was a bottom 5 corner room going into the season, and the pressure that Micah Parsons was able to generate was able to basically cover a lot of that up. Teams had to spend so much time accounting for him that almost every team that the Packers played almost just wasn't able to get into a rhythm offensively, right? And that really disrupted teams. That's the biggest thing with Micah Parsons, is that he's able to kind of just be a disruptor. And that is such a big thing to have when you're deficient at, I think, really at the defensive tackle spot. And I think that's a big thing to have when you're deficient at corner. And the Packers are greatly deficient at corner. Their number one corner is Keisean Nixon, who is not very good. I'm sure I talked about it in my last video on this channel, where I mentioned those big plays that were given up. They were given up versus the Bears. Both of those final 2 games that they played against the Bears, both of those were given up by Keisean Nixon. Those big deep shot touchdowns were given up by Keisean Nixon. He's not a very good corner. If he was like CB3, CB4, he'd be fine. It'd be more than acceptable for him to be rostered. But he is CB1 on this team. And Brian Gutekunst thinks he had a very good year. Brian Gutekunst said of Keisean Nixon had a very, very good year. Doesn't think the cornerback room needs wholesale changes, but just wants to improve depth at the position. I think there needs to be wholesale changes. Nate Hobbs, when healthy, isn't very good. And here's the issue with that. Nate Hobbs is never healthy. Carrington Valentine sucks. I'm done. I don't want to hear about Carrington Valentine anymore. He's not good. We've been doing the, oh my God, just give Carrington Valentine more snaps for like 2 years now. He's not good. Stop. I don't want to hear it anymore. He's not good. And then Casey Nixon, like I said, should probably be returning kicks and punts. He doesn't want to do that anymore, so he just wants to be a corner. I have no idea when we've decided, well, Casey Nixon is good enough to dictate what the hell he does on the field. Who the hell is Casey Nixon to dictate what he does? If he doesn't want to return punts and kicks, cut his ass. He's not a good enough corner to justify that. This isn't Travis Hunter. What are we doing? Doesn't make any sense. Also, he had some special things to say about special teams, which when it comes to the Packers aren't so special. Or maybe they are special. It kind of depends on your definition of special and what I'm getting at there with that. But let's be nice here. When asked about whether or not he needs to put a greater emphasis on special teams. And again, last video I talked about this, about Rich Bisaccia, where I felt like he was kind of being unfairly maligned by a lot of so-called smart Packers media people. I've been under the impression, and I think a lot of people have been, or have kind of had this thought, is the issue with the Packers special teams isn't necessarily that, that it's a coaching issue. They've been through so many different special teams coaches, Sean Monangai, Ron Zook. I mean, just all these different names of special teams coaches have come through Green Bay. And the special teams have always been bad, have not been very good. They have not been very efficient at things. Well, he thinks, this is his words, I really think over the last 4 or 5 years, we've probably put more of an emphasis on it than we ever have. This is regarding special teams. I don't know what he's talking about. Do you mean in terms of hiring Rich Bisaccia, making him highly paid? Is that what you consider a big emphasis? Because outside of that, you've had the same emphasis you've had on special teams, or the Packers have had for the past 25 years. In that we use the end of the roster for developmental players. We use the end of the roster for developmental linemen, offensive or defensive, developmental edge rushers. And yeah, that's what we use the end of the roster for. We do not use the end of the roster for special teams guys in Green Bay. That is just not something they do. If it comes down to it, that final cut day is this guy a good special teams player? Yes, but the other guy, he might develop into a decent pass rusher one day. They're going to take the guy who could develop into a decent pass rusher one day. And it's not even like that strategy has necessarily worked out. The Packers are constantly one of the youngest teams in the league, and a lot of these guys just never develop. Right? They love taking these guys who have these great athletic profiles and like, well, we just got to coach them up. We just got to coach them up. When was the last time the Packers coached someone up from being a great athlete into a great football player? On defense. I mean, no one. There hasn't been anyone. Right? I mean, I guess you could say, can you say Lucas Van Ness? Can you say Rashawn Gary? Those are first round picks. Those guys better develop somewhat. Or else Brian Gutekunst would be out on his ass. Granted, I think he should be out on his ass. But I feel like this sort of answer for the special teams is completely unacceptable. And again, it gets to the arrogance. The arrogance of the Green Bay Packers. The arrogance of the front office. The arrogance of Brian Gutekunst is why this team is always going to fall short, in my opinion. And then Brian Gutekunst topped it off with the special teams, talking about Brandon McManus, one of the league's highest paid kickers. He thought he had a great season. He thought McManus really showed out. Now, I don't understand that, right? And, he missed, he missed so many high leverage kicks in that playoff game. Those are high leverage moments. He missed the kicks. He missed them. He absolutely missed them. And, look, I just don't get it. I 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 don't understand it, right? I think when you go back, and you look at some of the moves he's made over the past couple of years, you look at the drafts. I always point back to that 2020 draft. I always point back to that draft because I always feel like that is a draft that was a real point where you know, was a point where the Packers were right there in terms of competing, and the GM blew it. The GM absolutely blew it. The Jordan Love pick, fine pick. I didn't like it at the time. I still kind of don't. I still feel like you kind of just blew an opportunity to go for it, go for a Super Bowl, and you blew it because you took a quarterback. Now, Jordan Love has been a fine player. I'm more of the opinion that Jordan Love is a fine quarterback. Fine. Fine, good, decent. Think Kirk Cousins. Good years in Minnesota, good years in Washington. I think that. Like that's kind of where I think Jordan Love is, I wouldn't even say, I don't even know if he's as good as necessarily like Matt Ryan at his best. I think there's just something about Jordan Love that just kind of keeps him from being in that upper echelon of quarterbacks. Now, I don't know what that is. I'm willing to admit, I'm not smart enough to put into words what that is. It's just when I watch him, I don't see that. I don't know what that is. It just doesn't have it. There's an itness factor to it, right? When you're watching it, someone either has it or they don't have it. Jordan Love doesn't have that it factor and I know this sounds so like non-technical because we live in the era of analytics and tape watching and all that stuff. And I am talking about like it factor and things like that. But that's just kind of how I see it. I'm going to keep saying it. I'm going to be done saying it. But we go back to the 2020 draft. First round pick, Jordan Love, fine, whatever, decent. Where it really falls apart is everything after that. A.J. Dillon was a second round pick. He was just fine. I mean, there were still real NFL players on the board probably, and we took a third string running back in the second round who never was a starter, never turned into a starter, had one great game against Tennessee in the snow, and nothing after that. The third round pick, these are still top 100 picks, top 150 picks here. So the idea that you can't find NFL players past the first round, that's bull. That's BS. That's nonsense. Other teams do it every year. And if you're a GM of the Packers and you're going for a Super Bowl, you have to find these players. And the third round in 2020, you took Josiah DeGuara, who is just a terrible NFL player. Out of all these day 2 to 3 picks, the best pick of that 2020 draft might be John Runyon Jr. And here's the thing about that. You're not even going to get he's been actually pretty solid with the Giants. Actually, he's been a decent player for the Giants. He was just whatever here in Green Bay. They didn't bring him back. Kind of just, you can replace him pretty easy, but he's been pretty decent with the Giants. He's been okay with the Giants. So that's maybe the best pick. You count out Jordan Love. The best pick was John Runyon Jr. That was the best pick for the Packers in the 2020 draft, and he's not even on the roster anymore. So when you look at some of these drafts, I mean, the 2021 draft you took Eric Stokes, whatever, Josh Myers, whatever, Amari Rodgers, terrible, Royce Newman, terrible, Tadaro Slayton, not good, Sherman John Charles, not very, Cole Van Lannon, who I believe has turned into a decent player in Jacksonville, actually. So, hey, another player that we didn't get the best of. So the best player from that 2020 draft is probably Isaiah McDuffie. He's a very good inside linebacker, very solid player. So you got Isaiah McDuffie, 6th round pick, but Eric Stokes, Josh Myers, again, top 3 picks of that draft, nothing. Top 4 picks, which if you count Royce Newman, nothing. Stokes, Myers, Rodgers, Newman, nothing. 2022, Quay Walker. I don't like Quay Walker. I don't think he's a very good football player. Devontae Wyatt, he's okay. Christian Watson, good when healthy. Sean Ryan, all right. I mean, the 2022 draft was very good, and that's why you've seen success, from 23 on, I think, is because you hit on the 22 draft so much. I mean, look at all the players you hit here. The 2022 draft is likely Brian Gutekunst's best draft. It's his best draft, I think, by far, in terms of just, starters. A lot of these guys are starters. Quay Walker, Devontae Wyatt, Christian Watson, Sean Ryan, Romeo Dobbs, Zach Tom, Kingsley Enagbare, Rasheed Walker, 7th round pick. He's been a starting left tackle for the past few years. I still think Rasheed Walker's good. Whatever. He's a free agent, so that's why I think a lot of the Packer and media people kind of don't like him anymore, is because he's going to leave. So you got to, kick him on his way out. I think Rasheed Walker has been more than fine at left tackle. But the 2022 draft was good. Then you get the 2023. Again, still good. This is still a good draft. This is maybe a second best draft when you think about it. But Lucas Van Ness, whatever. Luke Musgrave, whatever. Jaden Reed, okay. I say okay because he had like a good start to his career. And then I feel like once teams figured out, he likes doing these end around jet sweep things with Jaden Reed, and teams started taking that away, it's kind of been whatever. Tucker Kraft, great. Absolutely great. Then you got Tavian Wicks in the 5th round. It's been very good. And then you got, Carrington Valentine, who has been not very good, I feel like. 7th round pick. I feel like people kind of want Carrington Valentine to be great. It's just not happened. And then the 24 draft, Jordan Morgan, I don't think is very good. But whatever, other people do. You got Edrin Cooper in the 2nd round of that draft. That's a solid pick. I felt like he had a great rookie year. And then this past season, kind of whatever, right? Kind of just a whatever player. You look through here, Marshawn Lloyd, I don't think he's ever healthy. Tyron Hopper, I know lots of people think he has some potential. I haven't seen anything particularly special with Tyron Hopper. Evan Williams is a solid player. I say solid because, he seems like a guy who's not going to have a very long career because he's constantly leaving games with head injuries because he tackles with his head. He lays the wood, but he needs to lay it with his shoulder, not his head, if he wants to remember his name in 5 years. And then the most recent draft, the 2025 draft, Matthew Golden. Jury's still out. I wasn't a big fan of the pick. I thought you didn't really need receiver, but whatever. Matthew Golden. Anthony Belton could be a solid guard, actually. So I think you look through the 2025 draft, that might be the best pick is Anthony Belton. Savion Williams, I thought he was brought in to be a return guy. I don't think he really ever returned that many punts or kicks for whatever reason. And then the rest of the draft is whatever. Baron Sorrell, nothing. Colin Oliver, nothing. Warren Brinson, nothing. Micah Robinson, nothing. John Williams, nothing. So really, the 2025 draft looks to be a one-player draft so far because I think Anthony Belton looks very good. Actually, I think he's a very solid player. But, those are the drafts, right? I think you had a great draft in 23, okay draft in 24, and then kind of almost like a return to the mean in 2025 with a really just mediocre draft. I know people like Matthew Golden, but I don't see it. This video started off with me talking about Brian Gutekunst, right? And his New Year's address, whatever you want to call it. We talk about the draft a little bit here with the Packers, and again, they don't have a 1st round pick. They traded that for Micah Parsons. Granted, that might be a worthwhile pick until the guy tears his ACL, and then we'll have to see how Micah Parsons bounces back. But Brian Gutekunst talking the way he talked this past Thursday really does make me concerned going forward because he's got the extension, like a 5-year extension. So what's his... does he feel the pressure to put together a Super Bowl roster? I don't know, right? The fact that he thinks, even after all of the injuries of, again, Micah Parsons, Tucker Kraft, and Devontae Wyatt, that he still thought that it's a Super Bowl winning roster. He might not have said the exact words, but he definitely indicated he thought this team was still talented and good enough to get there, which I'm just shocked by, right? Because throughout the year, one of the biggest issues with this team was the offensive line play. The defensive line play at times wasn't very good. The corners weren't very good at times. So all of those things, and you're sitting there thinking, yeah, this is still a Super Bowl team. No, I don't think he has an incentive to lie. He already has the extension. So there's no point in him lying. He can easily come and say, you know what? Yeah, we got to get better at corner. That's something, you know what? We maybe went in with some guys who we still think are good depth pieces, but we definitely need to get better on that front line. That's all you have to say. But he didn't say that. He didn't choose to say that. He decided to keep lying. And I don't understand why. It doesn't make any sense to me. I mean, Brian Gutekunst is I don't get the point in lying about the corner room, the quality of it. Saying that we just need to add depth. No, you need to get some frontline starters at that position. I don't know how you're going to do it. I don't know if it's via trade. I don't know if you need to tag and trade a guy to go do this. You need to go do something. Because you can't roll into 2026 with Casey Nixon as your cornerback one and Carrington Valentine as CB2 and Nate Hobbs as, CB3. And just go, we just got to add like maybe two more guys and we're good. No, you're not. You are not good at corner. You're not good at special teams. You're not great at offensive line, in my opinion. There's some question marks there. There's question marks coming into this season, particularly with Aaron Banks. And that's going to be a question mark going into this season again with Aaron Banks at left guard. The addition of Aaron Banks completely destroyed the run game. This team needs a run game. Because this defense can't just constantly be going out on the field because you got to punt the football because you couldn't get anything on the run on first down. So, I don't know. The 2026 Packers, I feel like, again, I feel like it takes a few years for a bad draft to show up. And, they've been living off of that, what was that, the 2023 draft now? They've been living off that draft for a little bit. And they've been living off some of the hits of the 2024 draft. I think the 2025 draft doesn't look very good. And you're not going to have a first-round pick in this upcoming draft. So I don't know what you need to do. You need to hit on corner in the draft. You got to find someone with that second-round pick. If you got to trade up to the top of the second round to go get someone, you're going to have to go do that. But this team cannot roll in to 2026 with the same corner room thinking it's fine. It's not fine. It's not good. You have to keep some players on the back end of this roster who are good special teamers. You have to go sign some good special teamers. You have to get these things shored up. And then if Micah Parsons comes back healthy, if Tucker Kraft comes back healthy, if Devontae Wyatt comes back healthy, this team absolutely can go compete for a Super Bowl. But if they don't do those other things, it's going to end the same way it ended this team this past season, potentially with them even missing the playoffs. I could see that happening. So if you enjoyed this video, hit the like button, hit the subscribe video. I'll try to make more of these. This wasn't written out. This was me kind of just freebasing. So I went almost 22 minutes ranting about Brian Gutekunst, but we'll have to see. We'll have to see. Off-season going to be kicking off here very shortly. Super Bowl this weekend. My prediction for the Super Bowl is Seahawks 34, Patriots 17. Give me the Seahawks in this one. I'll see you in the next one. Peace.